Hey, what's up? This is Dr. Corey Glenn, and I wanted to do a case walkthrough of a recent case that we've been working on. And I'm kind of doing this just to kind of show a preview of what you'll learn at our upcoming guided surgery level 2 course. So this is coming up here in a couple of weeks. This is September 17th and 18th. It's guided surgery but focused on full mouth rehab. So this would be your all on X cases, doing FP1, basically anything that's full arch. It's talking about how to make the guides. So that could be bone reduction guides or soft tissue guides. Really, anything that's related to full arch is this is the course where we'll kind of teach you the entire workflow from A to Z, where you can do it yourself. But I thought a better way to do that would be to just show you an actual case and walk through some of the complexities of it and what my thought process is as I do this. So, patient was sent to us, or I should say, the data was sent to us to do planning on this case. Intraoral scans, pictures, a bunch of measurements, things like that, and then the cone beam data. And so the first step is always going to be open it up in Blue Sky Plan, and then stitch in your STL. So you can see here we've got the STL stitched. We always want to verify that there's a good stitch on that. So if you go up through here, you should be able to see that really tight adaptation of the teeth if you're looking at that model outline. So we've got everything lined up. And then you would think maybe just go ahead and start planning implants, right? Because that's what we know we're going to be doing. But a little premature for doing that because I can't plan the implants correctly, at least, unless I know where the teeth belong. And so let me jump out and go into PowerPoint and show you how I go about planning these cases from a smile design perspective first. So here are the patient pictures that were sent to us, and we don't need a whole lot as far as this is concerned. We need a full face smiling, a full face at repose to look at the incisal edge position. If it's not showing anything, we know we need to add a little incisal edge to that, and then a lateral view to help us know the buccal contour of the teeth, and maybe if we need to add a little bit to get the incisal edge to that wet dry line of the lip. But as you can see here, terminal dentition, lots of decay, definitely some room for aesthetic improvements. And so the first thing I like to do is use the PowerPoint template that I've made a video about a couple of weeks ago. That's available for you if you email info@transcendde.com. It's an entire PowerPoint template that can help you go through and do a smile analysis. So this line has been aligned to the interpupillary. This is a parallel line to that helps us drag that down to reference the incisal, or I should say, occlusal plane. And, when I do that, now it starts to make it jump out more that we've got canines and posteriors lower back here than the incisal edges up here. So there's been a reverse smile line developed on this patient, which generally makes for a less attractive smile. So we want to correct that if we can when we're doing our smile design. And then these lines over here you can drag into the width of the nose, which gives you a really good reference for your simulation of how wide the new proposed teeth need to be. So here is the lateral view. Again, I'm looking specifically here at the incisal edge. We've lined this up from the tragus of the ear to the ala of the nose. And then this is just a parallel line to that. But once again, it becomes evident that these canines are sticking down lower than the incisal edges. So I'm imagining I will probably have to lengthen the incisal edges some and then bring those posteriors from the canine back up to correct that occlusal plane. And so the starting point is to do the simulation. Now, this was the first one I did. I hated it. It does not look good. She looks like nothing but teeth here. So this is where it's useful to have a pretty big library of teeth that you can include in your simulations because, this is a really broad, wide smile. And if you look back at her original starting point, she's got kind of a square-shaped arch. So it's pretty flat across the front six here and then turns pretty abruptly and, not a lot of width in the buccal corridor. So I thought initially fixing that would improve things, but man, when I look at this, it just does not look right. And so I went back and grabbed another set of teeth. And so in that simulation PowerPoint template, there's several templates of teeth. This one is a little more similar to hers. So it's more of a square-shaped arch. And so we pulled these in. You can see that my lines here are set to kind of the width of the nostrils. So when I pull this in, I'm going to put the incisal edge where I think it needs to be. And I've already created a line down here to indicate that. And then you can see the outline here that I've done. That's just the polygon lasso tool. So I've lassoed everything in between her lips. And now I'm sizing this picture, the stock picture of a different patient, to those parameters. So one of the things that I noticed was she was showing a lot of gums in this picture, and I'd like to correct that. So here you can see I've stretched that picture up so that there's just the points of the gingival zenith showing. We've got the incisal edge where we need to be, and then the canines, we've widened the picture until it fills that space between these two blue lines. So that simulation looks something like this. Now to me, that looks far better than this one. I think you probably agree. And so this is what's going to help guide now the digital wax up that we're going to do. And one of the useful tools for doing that is you can actually go in PowerPoint and turn down the transparency on that simulation. And now I can see where her real teeth are below it. And that's the information I need to correlate. Where do I position these digital? So we're jumping back into Blue Sky Plan here. And I've already done the wax up, but I just want to go in and show this to you. So what we've done is gone into the denture module. Now, most of my digital wax ups, I like to at least start in the denture module. Now, it's not the greatest for adjusting individual tooth contours, but if you're trying to pull in a bunch of teeth very quickly, line them up to the arch form, the denture module is definitely the place to do it because you can use the tooth chain. It's really easy to make adjustments. And let me just make these teeth transparent so that you can see how they're mimicking that 2D simulation that we've done. So now we can see these teeth underneath. And again, I just referenced that 2D image that we created. We wanted to add a little bit of incisal length. We wanted to correct for this reverse smile line. So you can see I didn't really move the canine up much, but I kept it where it was, and I pulled the incisors down. Okay, so when you're doing these simulations, I find it's better to err a little towards being a bit toothy as opposed to not, because it's really easy to take material away on the temporary or on the fixed hybrid once you put it in, but man, it's difficult to add to. You're going to be using composite, and the bond may not be great. So I would err towards going a little bit long on your teeth. But this is the simulation or the 3D wax up that we've done. And then, we didn't really have to change much about her posteriors. The buccal corridor seemed to look pretty good on that simulation. So I did widen them just a bit. You can see these teeth stick out slightly more than where her natural teeth are, but we're really not making any big changes there. So now that we know where the teeth belong, now we're ready to begin planning implants. So I'm going to jump back into the advanced mode. So now we're back in surgical guide. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the upper implants that have been planned. And the doctor requested to have 6 implants if at all possible, even if that meant using some shorter implants. And so that's what we've done here. So I'll go one by one. This one is a disto-angulated implant. You can see we're hugging that sinus right here. There's really not a lot to work with beyond that. And so, perhaps you could do a sinus lift here and put one vertical, but you've got this big fin up here in the sinus, the septum. And so really the best scenario for this particular patient was to go disto-angulated. Now, if you'll also think back, we wanted to lengthen her teeth upward. Okay, so that means that we're going to have to do some bone reduction to move that transition zone up. And so we've got the implant about as deep as it can go. This is the nasal floor. This is a 30-degree abutment that's been placed on here. And so you can see the positioning everywhere. Let's go through the others. Once again, everything's going right to the nasal floor. So this is an 11.5 millimeter implant. That's about as long as we could get without doing a nasal floor lift. Same here. If you're wanting to see like prosthetic space, then we could just look from here and measure what we have available. So from the neck of the platform of the implant to incisal edge, we're at 16. And now we'll jump ahead and look at the other implants. Again, we're always trying to come in the anterior lingual to that incisal edge, preferably somewhere in the cingulum to get the best emergence profile. This is patient's left side in the canine region, again, lingual to the incisal edge, and then finally the patient left side disto-angulated implant. So this is going to emerge through the second premolar after it's had a 30-degree abutment put on. So no real infection risk. We've got pins placed in between each of these implants, and it may seem like I've gone overboard with pins, but one thing to realize is when you're doing these on patients that already have an existing dentition, if those teeth end up being really difficult to get out, sometimes you might blow out a buccal plate. So let's say if I'd only put 3 pins in, and in the area of this canine, I was to lose the whole buccal plate. Well, now that pin is worthless. So err towards more pins than less. You'll never, regret having them there. You may not use them, but at least you've got them. But if you don't have enough, that's going to create some difficulties for you. Let's go through now and look at the lower ones. And here you can see the emergence positions of the lower implants. And so, interesting configuration here. We've got disto-angulated just in front of the mental foramen, and then we've got some short implants in the posterior. This was a 4.3 by 8. This one is a 4.3 by 6. Okay. Again, may or may not tie those into the immediate load restoration, but once those are integrated, that's going to really add a lot of support. Because if you remember back to your picture, she's got some fairly large masseters. She's damaged a lot of teeth. That's obviously an indication there might be some parafunction going on. So let's jump through the lower implants, starting here on the bottom right. You can see that one is going to go in the distal socket here. And I'll turn on the nerves so you can see that. So we're about 2 millimeters from the nerve. Can't really get much closer than that. This is the disto-angled one. So you can see we're fairly close proximity to that mental foramen. And 30-degree angled multi is going to upright this. In the anterior, we've got straight up and down implants. I could go a little longer, but then I'm going to be drilling into this cortical bone. That's going to make for a lot tougher drilling, and that really ought to be plenty of implant. That's a 4.3 by 11. This one we got 4.3 by 13. So lots of titanium in here. This should be plenty of implants to be able to get an immediate load restoration on. These distal angled ones, you really got to be careful to look at them from all angles. And this tangential window that we're in right here, this upper right window, is the one to do that because we can spin this implant on its axis. And particularly when you're looking from this direction, you want to make sure you're fully within the cortical boundaries, trying to keep 1.5 millimeters of bone on all sides. And then once again, you can see the mental foramen right here. Now, some of you may be thinking, oh crap, it looks like you've got an anterior loop. That's actually not an anterior loop. That is the incisive branch. And so the way we can tell that is if we go into the axial slice and we scroll up and down through the mental foramen area. Now you can begin to see. So here's the exit of the mental foramen. And if that were in fact a anterior loop, remember it was going way up here and then coming back. It just doesn't do that. Anatomic studies show that it's almost never beyond 5 millimeters, and generally it's far less than that. So what you're seeing there, and this is typical, is as you go deeper, you'll see that nerve taking off down and towards the mesial. I'm not sure if we'll be able to make it out here as we get deeper. And you can start to see it right here, but all this is the continuation of that mandibular canal that's going up here to give blood supply and innervation to the anterior teeth. The remainder of the implants. Last one was this 4.3 by 6. Again, about as deep as we can go without getting close to the nerve. So I know on this lower, I'm going to have plenty of room for a hybrid. If you wanted to verify that, you can go over here to the incisal edge, and we could evaluate how much space is there. So from here up to just our old incisal edge, that's 20 millimeters. That's tons of room for a hybrid. Upper is going to be a little bit more difficult, but we'll get into that a bit later. So right away, what I'm thinking is this is going to be a bone reduction case. Remember, on both arches, to get the adequate prosthetic space and to get down into some good bone, we're having to be pretty far subcrestal. So my general rule is that if I'm more than about 4 millimeters or so subcrestal, that's an indication for a bone reduction guide in my book. So if we're going to do bone reduction guides and bone supported guides, then the next step is we've got to do bone segmentation. So we can turn implants off for the moment here. We've done our prosthetic planning. We've done our smile simulation, figured out where ideal teeth need to be, and then planned the implants backwards from those. And now we need to do the segmentation. So we did a segmentation of the maxilla and a segmentation of the mandible. Now, one thing you'll always experience is that when you segment the teeth, it's really, really low quality, right? And I want to make guides that can actually index onto the incisal edges for positioning my bone reduction guide. That's going to be the most accurate way. And so in order to do that, we can't really work off this model. But what we do have available to us is we've got this model, which has really high quality teeth. And then we've got the bone model. We could just basically cut the teeth off of this and swap the teeth from this model in. And now we have a bone model, but with really accurate teeth. So I'll turn all this off, show you what that looks like. So here is the model that I'm talking about. Again, just we've taken parts of both models and just generated a single model with really high quality teeth and then the bone below that. So whenever I do these, I'm going to start by making a single guide, and the only implants that I would want on are the pins. I guess they're not actually implants, but I want those pins on because I do need those tubes to be included in the initial pin guide that I'm going to be placing. So you can turn all these on. So we've got all the pin tubes turned on. We're not worried about implant tubes right now because, as you can imagine, those will all be impinging into the teeth. Right now, all we're going to do is make what I would call a pre-reduction guide. This is the guide that will become the reduction guide. Now, that is important that it has the pin tubes. So whatever tubes you have on are going to get incorporated into that guide. Now, we're going to need something that has a path of draw that will seat both on the bone and on the teeth. And the way that I do that is I just go into the denture module. I've got some teeth there. I pretend like I'm going to make a denture, but really all I'm doing is trying to generate this. This is a path of draw model. Okay, so I'm usually kind of looking from, you know, an aspect like this. I'll generate the path of draw from that view, and then all I'm trying to do is get that model, and then I get out of the denture module, and now I'm ready to make guides on this. So this would be what I'd make the guide on. I'll turn off that model. And the reason for this is that now we can build a guide and it's going to seat on these teeth, which are going to be the most accurate way to index this, but it will also seat passively without having any undercuts or anything onto the buccal of that bone. Now there'll be isolated little areas like this and this that will not get incorporated, or they'll get incorporated, but they'll just have a gap, but that's okay. So I went into the surgical guide module, I generated this. Really, really excessive perimeter to the guide that I'm doing because I'm going to cut this back later. It's always better to go way too big with your perimeter of the guide than to go too small. So this is what I generated. I'll turn these pins off now. You can see that these tubes have been incorporated in. I would name this pre-reduction guide, as you can see here. Save it. Man, always save your cases when you're working on these big cases because, man, if you have a crash or something and lose all this, you will be doing a lot of cursing. So this is my pre-reduction guide. I would export that. This is going to become my reduction guide. So let me turn on the reduction guide and let you see what that looks like in comparison. So now you can see this is the reduction guide as it would be if it were standalone. And this would go on pin to the buccal bone, and then everything from this flat spot and lower needs to be taken away. The challenge is how do we orient that? It is buccal only. So again, if you look here, this is just this same guide, just cut down somewhat. But the way I've been doing this lately is I can also utilize this to cut off everything above, let's say mid-tooth right here. And so this would be the initial guide. Okay, once again, look at the similarities. This just came from this. I did a little smoothing there. That's what you're seeing. But the way that I've made this is I just took this guide, chopped it. That gave me this. And then I chopped it again up here, made the reduction guide. And if I can turn off all these surfaces, this is what the initial guide would look like. It's tooth supported. It's going to go on and index really precisely with these teeth. And that's going to simultaneously position your bone reduction guide. So there's no question it's exactly where it needs to be. I just connect these with some tubes and mesh mixer, and these are going to be sacrificial tubes. So carry this in, you would lay your flap and then put this guide on, position your reduction guide on the buccal bone, drill your pinholes, put the pins in, and then once that's done, you could just come in here and section each of these little sacrificial supports, and the whole indexing tray that fits on the teeth would fall away, leaving you just the standard reduction guide. Okay, so do your bone reduction, and I've already got all the models generated. So if we were to look at that, once you've done reduction, this is the jaw that you end up with. You can see here, because we make the model work, I always make these with the implants pre-subtracted out. So if you wanted to drill in these, do a mock surgery, you can. So we went from the maxilla like this down to here, okay? And then these are our implant positions within this. So now once you've got the bone reduction done, you need to do your drill guide. So let's turn on the drill guide. Notice the similarities. It is nothing more than the bone reduction guide, but now with the tubes added in. So with the tubes, and these are the implant surgical guide tubes, we've got those, and if you just had those stand alone, they would just be up there floating in space. So once again, I use the tube function in Mesh Mixer to go in and turn this all into a guide. The pinholes, again, it's just your original reduction guide, so there's no way this doesn't fit. It has to go in. If your reduction guide was in, then you'll know for sure this is in the right place when you can put this in place and all your pins go to the right position. So we would do our implant drilling now. And these are really, really stable. I've heard people be concerned that, aren't you going to be exerting force back here that's going to make this back dip? Not with 5 pins, you're not. This thing is rock solid, stable. And something to notice on the disto-angulated ones, you've got timing marks. And so every one of those little timing marks corresponds to a flat inside the hex of the implant. This is for Biomax implants. And so if we want to have everything line up, then we've got to make sure the implant not only ends up in the same position, but also the same degree of rotation so that that multi can sit in there and correct to the same position where we had it. If you remember, this is where that angled multi is going to correct to. So if I have it in the right position, but the timing is, say, 30 degrees off, then this yellow tube is not going to end up in the right position where it needs to. So when he does the surgery, he's going to just do his drilling, place his implant, and then there's 6 notches on the driver. He's just got to make sure that he aligns one of those notches to one of these. If you do that, then everything's going to line up perfectly. You can see the same thing on this side. So that would be for the implant drilling and for the implant placement. And then once that is done, let's turn on the upper prosthetic. Okay, you can see this now. I've left the guide on up here because I wanted to show you. Again, this is all iterations of the exact same reduction guide. So once again, if this first reduction guide went into place, you know for sure you're in the right position. There's no losing your vertical, not sinking things deep enough or any of that. So let's turn that guide off now. This is the immediate load prosthetic. And due to the space, by the time that you gave yourself 3 millimeters of space for the gingiva, there really was not adequate room to do a traditional hybrid restoration here. We were kind of on the low end of the space that's required. So what we've done instead is an FP1. All right. Notice where the implants emerge. So everything is pre-planned. So if you line up your implants, you put your multi on where it's supposed to be, then you know your cylinder is going to be emerging right through here. Now the straight ones, that's easy, right? But the angled ones are what gives you a problem. So we've tried to inflate this to make this as strong as possible. We've added a lot of bulk to the lingual. The buccal, you kind of need to leave it where it is for aesthetics sake, but this is going to make for a really nice emergence. Generally, I recommend delivering this and then suturing at the end after everything is delivered. So you're basically just snugging the tissue up to this final prosthetic. And if you do that, then just like a healing abutment, Danny Doming and I did an article called The Full Arch Healing Abutment with this same concept. Just like with a single tooth implant, your gingiva heals to that healing collar. The same thing applies full arch. So we don't want to sew everything up and then try to seat this. This already has the correct, pontic profiles, distance from the bone and everything. So instead, deliver this, and then when it's all delivered, then suture the tissue to this, and it's going to take the shape of the underside of this restoration. And these teeth will look like they're emerging from the gums naturally. Okay, so you would use this, you would pin it into place, your cylinders would be emerging through here, and you would use acrylic or whatever material you like to lock that chimney cylinder to your temporary. Once that's done, then the pins have served their purpose, and at that point you could come in and just section these little sacrificial supports, and that's going to leave nothing but this FP1 left behind. Now, if you wonder what these are, it can be difficult sometimes to get in here and try to, if you've got a cylinder emerging in here, these are pretty precise holes. Your cylinder is probably 3 millimeters. The whole hole here is 5. It can be difficult to squirt the acrylic in there, and salt and peppering it, that just takes forever. So what these are just little holes. And so if you fill a syringe with acrylic, then you can just literally put the tip of the syringe in here and pump that acrylic in, and it will fill the entire space around your cylinder very quickly and easily. So you can pick everything up all at once. And again, once the pickup is complete, now you could just section here, 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 and here. Go trim those up with a burr, and this would just be discarded. Its only purpose was to position things properly. So that would be the completed case for the upper arch. Okay, I won't go through in as much detail, but let me just show the same things for the lower arch. So once again, we created a combined model. We've got the bone, but then we robbed the high quality teeth from the intraoral scan and just combined those into a single model, generated a path of draw, and then built that huge, what I call the pre-reduction guide again. And when we did that, we can take that same pre-reduction guide, chop the top of it to be your tooth index. And again, just in case you missed it, the reason for that, the reason I want to make one guide and use it to create both the reduction guide and this is that they have a common path of draw. That's the only way that you're going to get all this to seat properly is if you've got a common path of draw between the two. So, for example, if you had fully engaged the back of this tooth, well, you're not going to get this seated on the bone. So this will all seat on the teeth, lay your flap, this will seat into place, drill your pinholes, pin it into place, and as soon as you do that, you can chop these with a burr, and now begin your bone reduction. This would be that reduction guide as a standalone, and once you've done the reduction, you would have this jaw. Okay, so this is your reduced jaw. Once again, the implant holes are already present in case you want to do a mock surgery, including the pins. The pins will go into place, as you can see right there through the transparency. So we do our bone reduction all the way down to this flat spot on the reduction guide, and then we're ready to take this out, trash it, and now put in your drill guide. So here's that drill guide. Again, I left the reduction guide on just so you could see that they are one and the same. There's no question this is going to seat properly. If you're making these for yourself, do always go back. I told you to make your boundaries really overextended. But if you've got this sitting on the mental foramen, you're going to end up doing some damage to that nerve. So I always have to come back in and just use the cut function right here to cut up and over the mental foramen so you've got space for that. This is going to seat now. There's no interference that would keep this from seating. We would put this on and now drill all of our osteotomies. Once again, for the disto-angled implants, we've got timing marks. So you would line one of the driver notches up to one of those timing marks once it's in place, and then place all of your implants. Once that's done, you can take this out again and then put in your lower hybrid. Okay, so this, again, I've left this on so you can see it's all the same guide. This is one of the reasons I love teaching this workflow is you don't have to know how to make a dozen different types of guides. You're making kind of one guide once and then just repurposing that over and over to become these various guides. So I'll turn off that drill guide, and now you can see this is just the reduction guide serving the purpose of indexing your prosthesis into the correct position. So being that the lower is more of a traditional hybrid shape, again, you can see the holes are pre-subtracted out. We've also got the same little holes that are going to be used for filling with a syringe of acrylic. On the distal ones, it's hard to get in here from the buckle, so that hole is made from the lingual. Just squirt your tip in there, and that will fill everything to pick up your cylinder. And once the cylinder is picked up, then you can cut off these, and now you have a almost finished hybrid that is pre-designed to be smooth and ovate on the underside. It sits exactly 3 millimeters off of the new height of bone, so you know you're not going to get angry tissue because you're impinging too deep or anything like that. And the reason you're seeing this is just some gingival cutback. I like to make these monolithic. We typically print these out of Vigo permanent crown and bridge resin because it's super, super strong, but it's monochromatic. So we'll go back in and add some gingiva into this cutback that I've done. So that's really the overall case here. These cases turn out really well. And as long as you just are precise about getting everything lined up and positioning, there's really no way to get off on these cases without just doing something really dumb, using the wrong drill or something like that. So anyways, that's the workflow that we'll primarily be teaching at this upcoming course on full arch surgical guides. It's worked extremely well. Yeah, you can do stackable. If you can do this, stackable is not a problem either. I typically just don't teach stackable just because there's a lot of litigation and stuff surrounding that. And frankly, this works in my hands just as well. Maybe it takes another 30 seconds to a minute to swap these guides out throughout surgery. But my gosh, I mean, if you can design all this stuff yourself, you're probably looking at $100 an arch all-in cost compared to a lot of the guided products that are out there on the market that can be upwards of $7,000, $8,000. So this is a really cool workflow that we can do for this. Hope you can join us at the course again. It's going to be September 17th and 18th at Transcendental in Huntsville, Alabama. And we do have options for online attendance and in-person attendance. So, anyone who takes the course, they're going to get the Zoom recording of the entire course afterwards, along with all the files and everything. So it's drinking through a water hose while you're at the course. You're not going to leave like, as a ninja able to run through these cases in 20 minutes, right? It's going to take practice, but you've got all the files, all the data that you need to do and to reference back to so that you can do these. The goal really with this course, our lab does this planning. We'd love to do planning for you, but the point of this course is to teach you the workflow, let you be able to design these things in-house. Man, there's nothing that makes me happier than seeing someone that really can master this software and again do a lab service that would be typically $7,000 and do it in their own office with a few hours of work and $100 in overhead. So that kind of stuff just really makes me happy. So anyways, hope you can join us for the course, and we look forward to seeing you.